2025 feels like it's only just started, and yet here I am talking about the books that I plan to read in February. Time has a habit of doing that, pals, doesn't it? I've got a bit of a combination of some literary fiction, some fantasy, and a big old chunky classic that I've been working my way through. Let's get into it. There's a book that I'm bringing forward from January because it's absolutely massive. It's a bit of a heavier read and I'm taking my time with it. The first book I'm going to talk about is a book I'm continuing to read, and I started this on the 1st of January and I'm still going strong with it. I'm talking about The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This book is quite long. I think this edition is 1,243 pages long. So bit of a chunk, written in the mid 1800s, I believe, so it is old and the language is quite heavy. Contextually it is quite different to modern day. It's definitely from a more historical period. We follow a man named Edmond Dante who is unfortunately a little bit unfortunate in terms of the people that he encounters in his life. He ends up going to prison for a very long time for a crime that he absolutely had no part in, did not commit, and then he gets out and he knows that there is a stash of treasure. And this book is not just about him in prison, although he's there for quite some time. It's about his adventures, his whimsies, the things he gets up to after he gets out of prison, a completely changed man. I am 643 pages in, so essentially about halfway now. I'm slowing off on it a bit because I won't lie, I'm getting a little bit tired of just the length of it. I've read that this is actually a collection of serialized stories, which makes sense because I feel like we go through a lot of different little events. Some of them are really quite fun, and so far I am quite enjoying it. It's actually really very readable given that it was written almost 200 years ago. It is definitely very accessible. I would say I am enjoying it when I'm reading it, but when I put it back down I don't feel super inspired to pick it back up, but that's probably a bit of a me problem. So I'm just going to continue along slowly with it and I'll let you know how I get on when I get to the end. Next then I have a fantasy novel, and as ever I'm trying to read the books on my shelves and prioritize those for this year, just like I did last year. I have quite a few first books in series and I've been avoiding them a little bit because I really want to finish out the other series that I'm reading, but given that I just really want to read this one, I'm picking it up in February. So this I'm talking about is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, and this is the first book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I'm casually sitting here waiting for my really loud family to be quiet. This one I believe is like one of the most lauded, apparently most impressive, most interesting fantasy series ever written, and I love that it was written by a woman. I actually don't know too much about it, no matter that I've read the back of the book so many times, but I really like this dedication at the front. It says, "For all those who have to fight for the respect that everyone else is given without question." And I have read the first page and we have a lovely map and I'm really into the first line. So it's the prologue. The first line then goes, "Let's start with the end of the world, why don't we? Get it over with and move on to more interesting things." Already I really like the tone of the storyteller, so this is one that I feel like I'm going to really enjoy, just given the hype around it. Next then is a literary fiction novel, kind of historical fiction I guess, and it's a novel that I still feel surprised about not having read. February is the month, it's the month of Valentine, so it's the month of love, and this is probably the closest to what I have of romance on my shelves at the moment. And the book I'm talking about is Brooklyn by Colm Tóibín. I saw the film of this book that was made quite a few years ago now, so I don't remember it the best, but I believe we follow a woman named Eilish who is from Ireland. She moves to New York, creates a life for herself over there, becomes part of a community over there, makes friends, builds relationships, and then I think something happens back in Ireland where she comes back, and then again she gets immersed in life here, and essentially it's about a young woman who has to choose between her life in another country and spent her life here in Ireland. It's not that long, and I feel like it's just time that I picked this one up. I think Colm Tóibín is an incredible author, and I really want to read more of his works. Next then, yet another fantasy, and I'm really excited to get back into this world. You're all sick of me talking about these books, so let's just get on with it. I'm talking about Fool's Errand by Robin Hobb, which is the first of the Tawny Man trilogy, or the 7th book in the overarching Realm of the Elderling series. So this is a fantasy series overall made up of 16 books. Apparently it's one of the greatest fantasy series ever written, and judging by what I have already read, I would absolutely agree. So I read the Farseer trilogy, which is about a young man named Fitz, and then I read the Live Ship Traders trilogy, which was next, which is a nautical themed book, but these are a really interesting brand of fantasy. They feel much more character driven than maybe I'm used to fantasy feeling, and I think that works really well. It is a huge world. There are so many characters. It is bleak at times, but I've been really enjoying the magic of this world and how Robin Hobb writes. I'm not going to get into the plot of all of the trilogies that I've read so far, but suffice to say that I am very excited to get back into Robin Hobb. And we're back on the literary fiction train again, another book that's been on my shelves for quite some time, and I just need to bloody well pick it up. So no time like the present, I'm talking about Rainbow Milk by Paul Mendes. So I believe that this is potentially another book that's set in and around the 1950s, and we follow a young man, I think a young Jamaican man, and he ends up moving to London to start a new life. There is a lot in here, I believe, about religion and how that suppresses a lot about people in general sometimes, and I think this may potentially be a queer novel as well. Don't hold me to that. I think it does start out in the 1950s, but then we move into the new millennium, and that's when he's moving to London. So I'm presuming that we follow his life growing up in Jamaica, and then when he moves to London for a fresh start, things change. So this may potentially be a coming of age novel, which is something that I'm very interested in. I really enjoy this type of book. And also bonus points, this is a really floppy book, which is always nice when you're reading a physical book. I won't lie, pals, lately I've been veering toward reading my Kindle because it has a backlight and I can read it in the almost dark when it's really cozy, and I'm not feeling inspired to pick up my physical books. So it's nice that this one feels like it's easier to hold and easier to handle. A lot of the UK releases, which are what we get in Ireland, are quite stiff and very easy to crack the spines on, which I don't mind, but I do like a floppy book all the same. Anyway, what a tangent. I'm really looking forward to picking this one up as well, and to get back into literary fiction, because I feel like I've strayed away from it quite a bit of late. If nothing else, I have always historically been a literary fiction girly, so let's bring it back in 2025. And then last but certainly not least is yet another literary fiction novel, and this is a book that was kindly sent to me by Vintage, and it's not released yet. Its release date here is the 6th of March, so I want to read it before the release date to let you know what I think about it and let you know if I think it's worth reading. And this book is The Fisherman's Gift by Julia Kelly, and it says here that it is a story of love lost and found. I am a big fan of a really particular niche in books. I notice that I love a book that has a sort of coastal or island isolated setting, be that in a literary book, be that in a fantasy book, be that in a thriller. This is actually yet another historical book, and I'll read you the blurb. Winter 1900. A little boy washes up on the beach of a small fishing village in Scotland, barely alive. He bears an uncanny resemblance to the son of Dorothy, the teacher lost to the sea many years before. When the village is snowed in, Dorothy agrees to look after the child until he can be returned home. But as the past rises to meet the present, long-buried secrets in this small community start to come to light, like the snowdrops pushing up through the ice. and Dorothy finds herself thrown together again with the reclusive fisherman Joseph after years of keeping their distance. So it's bursting with tension and tenderness. This is an exquisite love story that delves into the griefs and hopes that can lie behind village gossip. I do love a historical novel, and I really love books set in barren winter landscapes as well, so I have a feeling that this one will be a bit of a hit for me. And that's that then. I feel like that is quite enough to keep me going for the month of February. Let me know if you have read any of these books and what you have thought of them, and what books are you yourself planning to read in February. If you want to leave a comment but you don't know quite what to leave me some sort of little heart emoji or something of the sorts, given that it's the month of February. And if you want to know how I get on with any or all of these books, hopefully I'll read them all, do subscribe to my channel. I'll give you a bit of a wrap up toward the end of February, if not the start of March. And otherwise, I appreciate your time, I appreciate your lovely energy and your kindness toward me, and I shall talk to you next Sunday for another video. Take care, pals. Bye bye.